In the aftermath of the previous night's terrifying encounter, the Matthews household remained on edge, haunted by the dark shadow of Maya's past. The early morning light seemed to offer some relief, but Emma and John could still feel the chill from the night before, lingering like a heavy cloud over their home. They sat together at the kitchen table, bleary-eyed and exhausted, going over the police report. Every detail felt surreal, like they were characters in someone else's nightmare. The officers had promised to keep an eye on the neighborhood, but that wasn't enough to comfort Emma. She could still see the man's face etched into her memory, a face that mirrored the haunting fear in Maya's eyes. As they prepared breakfast, Maya quietly entered the kitchen. She clutched her teddy bear, her gaze drifting between Emma and John, as if sensing their unease. Emma crouched down to Maya's level and forced a reassuring smile. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said softly. "Did you sleep okay?" Maya nodded slightly but said nothing, holding the teddy bear tightly against her chest. John set a plate in front of her, but she only picked at her food, her little fingers pushing the pieces around without eating. Emma's heart ached as she watched her daughter. She knew Maya's silence was her shield, her way of coping with whatever horrors she had endured. But last night's events made it clear that they couldn't wait for Maya's memories to resurface on their own. They needed to know what she had experienced to protect her from the dangers that continued to lurk just outside their door. After breakfast, Emma made a decision. She would reach out to Dr. Harris for an emergency session with Maya. It was time to go deeper, to find a way to unlock the secrets hiding behind her daughter's silence. When they arrived at Dr. Harris' office later that morning, he greeted them warmly but immediately sensed the urgency in Emma's eyes. He ushered them into his office, where the cozy atmosphere was meant to make children feel at ease, and Emma gently guided Maya to sit on the soft couch. "Dr. Harris," Emma began, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and desperation, "last night, he was here. The man from Maya's past, the one she calls the bad man. He came to our house, and Maya, she's been terrified. We can't keep going like this. We need answers." Dr. Harris' expression shifted to one of deep concern, and he nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. He turned his attention to Maya, who was staring at the floor, her small hands clenched around her teddy bear. "Maya," he said softly, his voice gentle and patient, "I know that speaking about certain things can be scary, but you're safe here. No one can hurt you, and your mom and dad are here with you. If there's anything you want to share, anything about this man who frightens you, we're here to listen." Maya looked up, her dark eyes wide and uncertain. She glanced at Emma and John, as though searching for reassurance. Emma gave her a gentle nod, silently encouraging her to open up. For a long moment, the room was silent, the weight of anticipation hanging heavily in the air. Then, slowly, Maya spoke, her voice barely a whisper. He took me from my mommy," she said, her words faltering. "I don't remember her face, just that she was kind, and she held me close, told me she loved me." Emma's heart shattered as Maya's voice cracked with emotion. She could see the pain etched into her daughter's expression, the anguish of a little girl torn from the only comfort she had ever known. "Maya, it's okay. You're safe here with us," Emma whispered, tears filling her eyes as she reached out to hold her daughter's hand. Maya continued, her voice filled with an innocent terror that made Emma's skin prickle. He took me away in a big car. I was scared and tried to get out, but he locked the doors. I don't remember where we went, but it was dark and I was alone for a long time." Dr. Harris leaned forward, his expression compassionate yet focused, as though he were piecing together a delicate puzzle. "Maya, did this man say anything to you while you were with him? Did he tell you anything about why he took you?" Maya's eyes welled up with tears, and she shook her head. "He just told me not to cry, said he'd take care of me, but he didn't. He was mean, and he hurt me when I tried to run." Emma felt a surge of anger mixed with overwhelming sorrow. She wanted to reach out and protect her daughter from the darkness that had stolen her innocence. But all she could do was listen, her heart breaking with each word. Maya took a shaky breath, her little fingers gripping the edge of her teddy bear. "One day I saw people coming. They were far away, but I ran. I ran as fast as I could, and that's when they found me." Emma remembered the story Mrs. Daniels had told them at the orphanage. Maya had been found wandering alone in a park, lost and frightened. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, painting a horrifying picture of Maya's past. Dr. Harris gave Maya a reassuring smile. "Thank you for sharing that, Maya. I know it wasn't easy. You're very brave." Maya nodded, her gaze shifting down once more. Her breathing was shallow, and Emma could sense that she had shared all she could for now. Emma reached out, pulling Maya into her arms and whispering words of comfort, promising her that she would never be alone again. After their session, Dr. Harris pulled Emma and John aside. His expression was serious, the warm gentleness replaced by a grave determination. "It's clear that Maya has endured significant trauma," he said quietly. "This man, he may be more dangerous than we initially thought. I would strongly advise getting the authorities further involved. We need to find out who this man is and what his intentions are." Emma nodded, her resolve hardening. She wasn't going to let this man haunt their family any longer. It was time to take action. That afternoon, they met with Detective Foster, a seasoned investigator assigned to their case. His weathered face and sharp gaze gave Emma a sense of relief. He was someone who would take their fears seriously. After explaining everything they had learned from Maya, Detective Foster leaned forward, his hands folded together thoughtfully. "We'll put Maya's description of this man into our database and cross-reference it with any known suspects fitting her story," he said. "We'll also send officers to patrol your neighborhood more frequently. In the meantime, I'd advise keeping an eye on Maya and your surroundings. This man sounds determined, and that kind of persistence isn't common." Emma felt a flicker of hope. The wheels were finally in motion, and with the police on their side, perhaps they would find the answers they desperately needed. That night, Emma and John took turns keeping watch over the house. Every sound outside felt like a threat, every shadow a potential danger. But as dawn broke, the house remained quiet, untouched by the darkness that had loomed over them. As the sun rose, a sense of calm began to settle, but deep down, Emma knew this was far from over. They had started to peel back the layers of Maya's past, and the truths they uncovered only hinted at the full story. Somewhere out there, the man who haunted her daughter's memories was watching, waiting, and closing in. Yet, as she watched Maya peacefully sleeping in her bed, Emma knew one thing for certain. She would go to any lengths to protect her daughter from the darkness. They were a family now, and together, they would face whatever lay ahead. As the sun rose over the Matthews household, the fear from the previous night lingered in the air. Emma barely slept, her thoughts cycling through Maya's haunting story and the shadow of the man who had, somehow, come so close to their home. The quiet presence of Detective Foster had been a comfort, but Emma knew they couldn't rely solely on the police. She and John needed a plan to protect their family until they knew more. Later that morning, Emma made a decision. She was going to uncover everything she could about Maya's past. She would reach out to anyone, dig into any record, to find out where Maya came from, and, most importantly, who the man was that she feared so deeply. Emma looked over at Maya, sitting quietly at the kitchen table, her gaze distant and her little hands wrapped around her teddy bear. Every so often, she'd glance toward the window, her eyes darting to the edges of the yard as if expecting someone to appear. "Maya," Emma said gently, "I need to go out for a little while. Daddy will stay here with you. Will you be okay?" Maya nodded, her expression solemn, but she didn't ask where Emma was going. It was almost as if she understood. Emma hugged her tightly before she left, feeling the little girl's fragility, but also a quiet strength. It was Maya's strength that kept Emma going, her fierce determination to keep her daughter safe. Emma's first stop was the Sunnyside orphanage. Mrs. Daniels, the social worker who had handled Maya's case, greeted her with a sympathetic smile, but looked apprehensive as she led Emma into her office. "Mrs. Daniels," Emma began, her voice steady, "I need to know everything there is about Maya's past, no matter how small the detail. There's a man, a dangerous man, who's come looking for her, and we believe he's connected to whatever happened to Maya before you found her." Mrs. Daniels nodded, her face growing serious. "Emma, I wish we had more information about Maya's background. When she was found, she didn't have any identification, no birth certificate, nothing to trace her family. We did everything we could, contacting every nearby county and checking with missing persons databases, but her identity remained a mystery." Emma felt a wave of frustration. She had heard this all before, but now she couldn't accept it. What about the man who came asking about her a few months later? Did he leave any clues, anything at all? Mrs. Daniels leaned back, thinking hard. "We didn't have a name, but I do remember something strange. The man was very insistent that we keep Maya's location private. It was unusual. He never gave a reason, but he almost seemed afraid that someone else would come looking for her." Emma's pulse quickened. Afraid? Did he mention anyone specific? Mrs. Daniels shook her head slowly. "No, but there was something off about him. He was well-dressed, polite, and yet there was this underlying tension. I felt it, but couldn't put my finger on it." Emma's mind raced. Someone else, another person, was connected to Maya's story. Someone dangerous enough that even this man was afraid of him. "Mrs. Daniels, could it be possible that this man isn't the only one who wants Maya?" Emma asked, her voice filled with dread. Maybe he was keeping her hidden for a reason. Mrs. Daniels' face went pale, and her hands tightened around a file folder. "Emma, if that's true, then Maya might be in more danger than we realized." Emma returned home, her mind reeling from what she had learned. As she stepped inside, she found John in the living room, watching Maya play with her dolls on the floor. She looked up as Emma entered, her eyes curious but still guarded. Emma and John exchanged a look. It was time to share what she had learned. "John, I think there's more to this than we thought," she began, motioning for him to follow her into the kitchen. Once they were out of earshot, she quickly recounted what Mrs. Daniels had told her. "There might be more than one person involved," Emma finished, her voice trembling. "We don't know who this other person is, but if he's dangerous enough to scare the man who took Maya, then we're in deeper than we thought." John's expression darkened as he absorbed the news. "So there's someone else out there, someone connected to her past who might also be after her." Emma nodded, her heart heavy. "Yes, and if we don't figure out who they are, they could show up here at any time." John took a deep breath, his jaw set with determination. "Then we need to get proactive. If the police can't give us answers, maybe we can find them ourselves." Emma looked at him, a flicker of hope mixed with fear. "What do you have in mind?" Over the next few days, Emma and John began researching, digging into every record they could find. They searched online databases, scoured local news archives, and even consulted old missing persons reports. But with each dead end, their frustration grew. Finally, a breakthrough came in the form of a news article from 5 years prior. It was a report from a small town 2 counties over, about a woman and her young daughter who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The woman's name was Sarah Lane, and her daughter, who was never found, was named Mia. Emma stared at the grainy photograph accompanying the article. The little girl looked eerily similar to Maya, the same soulful eyes, the same tightly coiled curls. Emma's heart pounded as she read the article, noting how little information there was about Sarah and her life before she vanished. Could it be? Could Maya be Mia? Emma quickly shared the information with John, who felt the same sinking feeling in his gut. They couldn't be certain without more evidence, but they were getting closer to the truth. They had a name now, and that was more than they'd had before. That evening, they contacted Detective Foster and informed him about the article. He promised to look into it further and see if there were any connections between Maya's story and the unsolved case of Sarah Lane and her daughter Mia. The days that followed were filled with a tense waiting. Maya seemed to sense the unease in the household and became even more withdrawn, her silences deeper, her gaze more distant. Emma and John did everything they could to reassure her, but the weight of her past hung over them, all like a dark cloud. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Emma's phone rang. It was Detective Foster. "Emma," he said, his voice tense, "we've uncovered something about the man who came looking for Maya. It seems he was connected to a criminal organization involved in human trafficking." Emma's hand flew to her mouth, horror and revulsion flooding her. "Human trafficking?" "Yes," Foster replied, his voice grave. "It's possible that he took Mia, from her mother, intending to exploit her. But for some reason he kept her hidden. Our working theory is that he was hiding her from his own people, that he took her for himself." Emma's stomach churned. The man who had haunted their lives, who had come so close to taking Maya from them, was part of something far darker than they had imagined. "What does this mean for us, Detective?" John asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "It means that Maya is still in danger," Foster replied. "If this man's associates find out she's alive, they might come for her. But we'll continue to keep an eye on your family, and now that we know more, we have a better chance of stopping them." Emma gripped John's hand tightly as they ended the call. Her worst fears were confirmed, but beneath the fear, a spark of determination burned brighter than ever. She and John would protect Maya with everything they had, and together, they would uncover the full truth about her past. That night, Emma tucked Maya into bed, brushing a gentle hand over her curls. "Maya," she whispered softly, "you're safe here with us. We won't let anything happen to you." Maya looked up, her eyes glistening with something Emma couldn't quite name. Perhaps hope, perhaps relief. "Thank you, Mama," she whispered, her voice so soft it was almost inaudible. Emma's heart swelled, and she bent down, kissing Maya's forehead. As Emma closed the door to Maya's room and joined John in the living room, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't going to let the shadows of Maya's past take away the future they had built together. Whatever came next, they would face it as a family, strong, united, and ready to protect the little girl they had come to love more than life itself. The following morning, Emma and John woke with a renewed sense of purpose, but also a lingering fear. The revelation about the man's connection to a human trafficking ring had left them shaken, yet determined to keep Maya safe. The police were watching their home, but that didn't lessen the dread they felt, knowing that the man and his associates might be plotting their next move. Over breakfast, Emma looked at Maya, who was unusually quiet, even by her standards. She was staring at her cereal, pushing it around without eating, her small face etched with a solemn expression. Emma reached over, placing a gentle hand on Maya's. "Sweetheart, are you feeling okay?" Maya nodded but didn't look up. Emma felt her heart twist. The recent tension had clearly affected her, and Emma worried about the toll it was taking on her little girl. She and John exchanged a glance, knowing they needed to find a way to help Maya feel secure. "Maya," John said softly, kneeling down to her eye level, "I know things have been a little scary lately, but I want you to know that we're here for you. We'll keep you safe, no matter what." Maya's eyes flickered toward him, a spark of gratitude mingled with uncertainty. For a moment, Emma thought Maya might say something, but then she simply nodded, her expression guarded. Emma decided that a distraction might help, something to lift Maya's spirits. "What if we spend some time in the garden today?" she suggested, trying to keep her voice light. "Maybe plant some flowers." Maya's face softened slightly and she nodded. Emma and John both smiled, relieved to see even the smallest hint of joy. That afternoon, as they worked in the garden, Maya seemed to relax, her small hands digging into the soil, planting seeds alongside Emma. For a while, the world felt normal again, free from the shadows lurking in their lives. But the moment was interrupted by the sudden sound of footsteps crunching on the gravel at the edge of their yard. Emma looked up, her heart hammering in her chest, as she saw Detective Foster approaching, his face tense. "Detective," Emma greeted him, wiping her hands on her jeans as she stood. John came over, sensing that something was wrong. "Emma, John," Foster began, his voice low, "we have a new lead. It appears that a man matching the description Maya gave us has been spotted in the area. We believe he's been trying to gather information about your family." Emma's heart sank, and she instinctively reached for John's hand. "He's here? In town?" "Yes, and from what we've gathered, he's persistent," Foster continued, his gaze shifting toward Maya, who was watching them with a wary expression. "We'll be assigning plainclothes officers to monitor the area. We're hoping to apprehend him soon, but until then, you need to be extra cautious." Emma's pulse quickened, and she glanced back at Maya, feeling the weight of the threat pressing down on her. "Thank you, Detective," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "We'll be careful." As Foster left, Emma and John exchanged a look, one of mutual understanding and determination. The threat was real, and it was getting closer. They had to be prepared for anything. That night, after putting Maya to bed, Emma and John sat together in the dim light of the living room, discussing their options. "I don't think it's safe for Maya to be here right now," John said, his voice low. "If that man is close, we need to get her somewhere he can't find her." Emma nodded, her mind racing through possible solutions. "Maybe we could take her to my parents' cabin. It's secluded, and only a few people know about it. It might be the safest place for now." John considered the idea, nodding slowly. "It's not a bad idea. The cabin is off the grid, and it would give us some time to work with the police and find out more about who this man is and what he wants." They quickly made plans, deciding to leave early the next morning. Emma began packing essentials for Maya, her hands moving quickly as she prepared to leave behind the life they had just started to build. But for Maya's safety, they would sacrifice anything. The next morning, they set out early, Maya quietly clutching her teddy bear as they drove through the winding roads toward the cabin. She didn't ask questions, but Emma could see the uncertainty in her eyes. Emma reached back, gently touching her daughter's hand. "We're going on a little trip, sweetheart," she said softly. "Just you, me, and Daddy. We'll be safe there." Maya's eyes softened, and she gave a small nod, though her grip on her teddy bear remained tight. After a few hours, they arrived at the secluded cabin, nestled in the woods. It was a simple place, but cozy and secure, with thick forests surrounding it on all sides. They unloaded the car and settled in, trying to create a sense of normalcy in this unfamiliar setting. For a few days, things felt peaceful. They played games, read stories, and went on short walks in the woods. Maya seemed to be at ease, her laughter occasionally filling the air as she ran through the trees or helped John gather firewood. Emma felt a flicker of hope, thinking that perhaps they had finally escaped the nightmare that had been haunting them. But on the fourth night, Emma woke to a faint noise outside. Her heart raced as she strained to listen. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunched on the gravel outside the cabin. She reached over, gently shaking John awake, her eyes wide with fear. "John, someone's outside." John's face tensed, and he quickly got up, motioning for Emma to stay quiet. He crept to the window, peeking out cautiously. His face paled as he turned back to Emma, his expression grim. "It's him," John whispered, his voice barely audible. "He's found us." Emma's blood ran cold, and she felt a surge of panic rise in her chest. They had come here to escape, but the man had tracked them down. "We need to get Maya out of here," she whispered urgently, glancing toward her daughter's room. "We can't let him get close to her." John nodded, his face set with determination. "You take Maya out the back. I'll try to distract him. Just keep going until you're far enough away, then call for help." Emma hesitated, fear gripping her as she looked at John. "I don't want to leave you." "You have to," John replied, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "I'll be right behind you. Just get her to safety." With a shaky nod, Emma rushed to Maya's room, waking her as gently as she could. Maya blinked, confused, but didn't protest as Emma lifted her into her arms, grabbing a small bag she had packed with essentials. They slipped out the back door, Emma moving as quietly as possible. She could hear the man's footsteps moving closer to the cabin, and she quickened her pace, clutching Maya tightly as they made their way into the dense woods. As they moved further from the cabin, Emma heard a shout, a deep, angry voice echoing through the night. She froze, her heart pounding, but then John's voice called out, leading the man away from them. Relief washed over her, and she pushed forward, keeping Maya close. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a clearing where Emma quickly dialed 911, her hands shaking as she explained their situation to the dispatcher. Officers were dispatched immediately, and within minutes, she could see the flash of red and blue lights cutting through the darkness. Emma held Maya close, whispering reassurances as the police arrived, their presence finally bringing a sense of safety. But her relief was tempered with dread as she waited for John. Finally, a few officers emerged from the woods, leading John back to the clearing. He looked shaken but unharmed, his eyes filled with relief as he saw Emma and Maya waiting for him. The man, however, had vanished once again, slipping away into the night before the officers could catch him. But Detective Foster assured them they were closer than ever to finding him. With his description and the latest evidence, the police would soon be able to close in. As the officers escorted them back to their car, Emma felt a profound sense of exhaustion, but also a renewed determination. She and John had come too far, endured too much, to let this shadow from Maya's past take away their family. They would stand strong, united, until the man who haunted their lives was finally brought to justice. That night, as they drove back toward home, Maya rested her head on Emma's shoulder, her little body finally relaxing. Emma held her close, a fierce love filling her heart. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together as a family, and one day soon, she knew, they would find peace. The drive back home was silent, each of them lost in their thoughts. Maya drifted off to sleep in Emma's arms, her small fingers clutching her teddy bear even in her dreams. John's hands were clenched on the steering wheel, his jaw set with determination. He glanced at Emma occasionally, as if to reassure himself that they were safe, that the man hadn't managed to slip back into their lives once again. By the time they arrived home, the sky was beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn. They carried Maya inside, tucking her gently into her bed. She didn't stir, her exhaustion finally catching up to her after days of worry and fear. Emma and John retreated to the living room, where they collapsed on the couch, the weight of the past few days pressing heavily on them. They knew they couldn't keep running forever, and the fear gnawing at them wouldn't dissipate until this man was caught. "I don't know how much longer we can keep doing this," Emma said, her voice barely a whisper. "We're living in fear every day, and Maya, she's been through so much already. She deserves peace." John nodded, his expression grim. "We need to stop waiting for him to come to us. If the police haven't caught him yet, then we need to take matters into our own hands." Emma looked at him, a flicker of hope mingled with trepidation. "What are you thinking?" "We need to find out who this man is," John replied. "If he's part of a trafficking ring, there has to be a record of him somewhere. Maybe Detective Foster can help us dig into his background, but we need to know why he's after Maya specifically. What's his connection to her? There has to be something we're missing." Emma nodded, her resolve strengthening. "I'll call Detective Foster. We'll meet with him and get to the bottom of this. We're not hiding anymore." That afternoon, Detective Foster met them at his office, his face etched with concern as he listened to their story of the latest encounter with the man. His expression grew darker with each detail, and by the end, he was shaking his head, clearly troubled. "This man is not only persistent, but he's escalating," Foster said, leaning back in his chair. "If he's part of a larger network, it's likely he has resources and connections, but we still don't know why he's targeting Maya specifically." Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Detective, I found an article about a woman named Sarah Lane who disappeared with her daughter, Mia, a few years ago. We think Maya might be that little girl. Is there any way you could look into it?" Foster's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. That's definitely worth pursuing. If this man is after her because of something related to her mother's disappearance, we might find our answers there. I'll pull up the case file and see what I can find. They watched as Foster typed rapidly on his computer, accessing records and databases as he sifted through old reports. After a few moments, his eyes widened. "Emma, John," he said slowly, his tone cautious. "I think you're onto something. There's a note in Sarah Lane's file that indicates she had been involved with a man named Victor Hale. He was known to law enforcement as someone associated with human trafficking networks, but had managed to evade conviction numerous times. He's been connected to cases where mothers and their children went missing, often with no trace." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "So you're saying this man could be Victor Hale, and that he might have taken Maya after her mother disappeared?" Foster nodded, his expression grim. "It's possible. And if that's true, then he may view Maya as his property, someone he thinks he owns. If he's been keeping tabs on her all these years, he might believe he still has control over her, even after she escaped." John clenched his fists, his face hardening with anger. "We need to stop him, Detective. We can't let him come near her again." "We're on it," Foster assured them. "With this new information, we have more leverage. I'll put out an alert for Hale, and we'll increase patrols around your neighborhood. If he tries to make contact again, we'll be ready." As they left Foster's office, Emma felt a new sense of purpose. They were no longer just running or hiding. Now they had a name, a target, and a plan. Victor Hale might be a shadow from Maya's past, but he wouldn't haunt her future. The following days passed quietly, but the Matthews family remained vigilant. Detective Foster and his team were relentless, tracking every lead on Victor Hale, hoping to find his whereabouts before he could strike again. Maya seemed to sense a shift in her parents' energy. She spent more time with Emma, seeking comfort and reassurance, though she rarely spoke. One evening, as Emma was reading to Maya before bed, she felt a tiny hand slip into hers. She looked down to see Maya staring up at her, her eyes wide with something unspoken. "Mama," she whispered, her voice trembling, "if the bad man comes back, will he take me away?" Emma's heart broke at the fear in her daughter's voice, but she wrapped her arms around Maya, holding her close. "No, sweetheart, he won't. Daddy and I will protect you, no matter what. You're safe here with us, and we're going to make sure he never comes near you again." Maya relaxed a little in her arms, though Emma could feel the lingering fear in her small, tense body. She held her daughter until she drifted off to sleep, silently vowing to do whatever it took to keep her safe. The breakthrough came late one night when Emma and John were woken by a call from Detective Foster. His voice was tense, but filled with excitement. "We found him," he said, his words electrifying them both. "We tracked down Victor Hale. He's been hiding in a cabin about an hour outside of town, likely waiting for the right moment to approach you again." Emma's heart pounded, adrenaline flooding her veins. "So you're going to arrest him?" "Yes, but I wanted you to know first. We're moving in tonight. I want you both to stay home, stay safe, and keep an eye on Maya. We'll notify you as soon as he's in custody." Emma and John waited anxiously through the night, their eyes glued to the phone, waiting for any news. Hours passed, each minute stretching into eternity. Finally, as dawn began to break, the phone rang. "It's done," Foster said, his voice wary but triumphant. "We've apprehended Victor Hale. He's in custody, and he won't be able to come near Maya again." Emma sagged with relief, her hand covering her mouth as tears streamed down her face. John wrapped his arms around her, his own eyes misting with emotion. After months of living in fear, their nightmare was finally over. In the days that followed, Emma and John worked closely with Detective Foster, learning more about Hale's background and the trauma Maya had endured. Hale had indeed taken Maya after her mother's disappearance, though the details of what she had experienced were too painful to delve into. But with his capture, a sense of closure began to settle over the family. Maya, sensing the shift, slowly began to open up. Her smiles came more easily, her laughter ringing through the house once again. She was no longer haunted by the fear of the bad man, and with each passing day, the little girl they had come to love flourished, free from the shadows that had once haunted her. One afternoon, as they were playing in the backyard, Maya looked up at Emma and John, her eyes shining with a newfound confidence. "Can we plant more flowers?" she asked, her voice light and hopeful. Emma smiled, tears prickling her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. We'll plant a whole garden." As they knelt together in the soil, their hands covered in dirt, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. Their family had faced unthinkable trials, but they had emerged stronger, bound by a love that no fear could shatter. And as the first seeds of their new life took root in the earth, Emma knew that they would continue to grow, their family blooming in safety, love, and a hard-won freedom. In the months that followed Victor Hale's arrest, the Matthews family began to truly settle into the life they had dreamed of. The shadow that had loomed over their home had lifted, and they found themselves breathing easier, sleeping peacefully, and laughing freely. Maya, too, seemed to blossom, her once guarded demeanor softening as she grew more confident and comfortable in her new life. Emma and John continued to work closely with Detective Foster, following the progress of Hale's case. He had been charged with multiple offenses, including kidnapping and suspected involvement in human trafficking. His capture had also led to the unmasking of several others within his network. It brought a sense of relief, knowing that not only had they secured Maya's safety, but they had also helped prevent others from enduring the same horrors. One crisp autumn morning, Emma found herself in the backyard with Maya, helping her pick out colorful leaves that had fallen from the trees. Maya's laughter rang out as she held up a bright red leaf, her eyes wide with delight. "Mama, look, it's as red as a fire truck," she exclaimed, her voice full of wonder. Emma knelt beside her, smiling at her daughter's enthusiasm. "It's beautiful, Maya. You're getting quite the collection." Maya nodded, tucking the leaf carefully into her little basket. She paused, looking up at Emma with a thoughtful expression. "Can we go see where he is now?" Maya asked suddenly, her voice quiet but resolute. Emma's heart stilled. She knew Maya was referring to Victor Hale, the man who had haunted her past and threatened her future. Emma had wondered if Maya would ever want to confront the man who had caused her so much pain, but she hadn't anticipated this moment coming so soon. Emma knelt down, looking into Maya's earnest eyes. "Why do you want to see him, sweetheart?" Maya thought for a moment, her small face serious. "I want him to know he didn't win," she whispered. "I want him to see that I'm safe and happy now, and that he can't hurt me anymore." Emma felt a swell of pride mixed with sadness for all that Maya had endured. Her little girl was braver than she could have ever imagined. She reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from Maya's face. "All right," Emma said softly. "If that's what you want, we can arrange it, but only if you're sure." Maya nodded, her expression unwavering. "I'm sure, Mama." A week later, with Detective Foster's help, Emma, John, and Maya arrived at the detention center where Hale was being held. The visit was arranged under strict supervision, and they were assured that Hale would remain restrained and unable to make any contact with Maya. Emma's heart was heavy with anticipation and anxiety, but she kept a brave face for her daughter. As they were led into the visitation room, Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. Victor Hale was seated behind a thick pane of glass, his wrists shackled to the table. His once intimidating presence had diminished. He looked older, warier, his gaze cold and calculating as he eyed them through the glass. Maya held Emma's hand tightly, her little fingers digging into Emma's palm. Emma could feel her daughter's nerves, but Maya took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and met Hale's gaze with a fierce determination. Hale's eyes narrowed as he looked at Maya, a glimmer of recognition flickering in his expression. He leaned forward, his lips curling into a smirk, but Emma felt an overwhelming sense of calm as Maya took a step forward, standing just a little taller. "You don't scare me anymore," Maya said, her voice clear and steady. "I'm safe now, and I have a family who loves me. You can't hurt me ever again." Emma's heart swelled with pride as she watched her daughter face her fears head-on. Hale's smirk faltered, and for the first time, he seemed at a loss for words. Maya's words held a power that went beyond her years, a power born from resilience, love, and the strength of a family that had fought to protect her. As they turned to leave, Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She glanced down at Maya, who was walking with a quiet confidence, her hands still holding Emma's. They had faced the darkest part of Maya's past and emerged victorious. The visit marked a new beginning for Maya. In the days that followed, she seemed lighter, her laughter more frequent, her joy less guarded. Emma and John watched as Maya blossomed, her spirit no longer weighed down by fear. She started making friends at school, participating in activities, and even trying out for the school play. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Maya looked up at her parents, a hopeful gleam in her eyes. "Did you think maybe we could have a party to celebrate?" she asked, a little shy but clearly excited. Emma and John exchanged smiles. "Of course, sweetheart," John said, reaching over to ruffle her hair. "What kind of party are we talking about?" "A family party," Maya said enthusiastically. "With you, me, Mama, and maybe some friends from school, and we can make lots of cupcakes." Emma laughed, her heart full. "That sounds like a wonderful idea, Maya. Let's do it." The day of the party arrived, and their home was filled with laughter, games, and the smell of freshly baked cupcakes. Maya's friends played in the backyard, their cheerful voices filling the air, while Emma and John watched from the kitchen, their hearts swelling with happiness. It was the life they had dreamed of, the family they had fought so hard to protect, now thriving in a way they had once only hoped for. As the evening drew to a close and the last of the guests left, Maya ran over to Emma and John, hugging them both tightly. "Thank you for making me feel safe," she whispered. "Thank you for being my family." Emma felt tears prick her eyes as she held her daughter close, overwhelmed with gratitude. "You're our family, Maya, forever." In the days that followed, life continued with a sense of peace and normalcy they had never fully known before. Maya flourished, surrounded by love, trust, and the warmth of a family who would always protect her. And for Emma and John, watching their daughter's strength, courage, and joy was the greatest gift they could have ever received. The dark days were behind them now. The Matthews family had come through the storm stronger, bound by the resilience of love and the power of hope. Together, they had created a life filled with safety, laughter, and the beautiful promise of a future where nothing could break their bond. As the Matthews family settled into this new chapter, life unfolded with a gentle rhythm, each day bringing new moments of joy and connection. Maya was thriving, her confidence blossoming in ways Emma and John could hardly have imagined. The shadow of her past seemed to have all but faded, replaced by a bright future filled with hope. One sunny Saturday morning, Emma found herself in the garden with Maya, tending to the flower beds they had planted together. Maya's hands were covered in soil as she carefully patted down the earth around a young sunflower, her favorite flower. She looked up at Emma, her face radiant. "Mama," she said, "do you think these flowers will grow as tall as the ones we saw at the park?" Emma smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Maya's face. "I think they'll grow even taller," she said. "You've taken such good care of them. They're sure to be the most beautiful flowers in the neighborhood." Maya beamed, her smile wide and genuine. She was happier than Emma had ever seen her, her once guarded heart now open and trusting. The little girl who had once been so quiet and afraid had found her voice, and it filled Emma's heart with pride every time she heard it. As they continued working, John came out to join them, carrying a tray of lemonade and cookies. He set it down on a small table under the shade of the tree, grinning as he watched them work. "Looks like my two favorite gardeners have been busy," he said, handing a glass of lemonade to Emma and then to Maya. "You're going to make this the most beautiful garden in town." Maya giggled, taking a big sip of her lemonade. "It's our secret garden," she said proudly. "Only for us." Emma and John exchanged a warm smile, feeling the fullness of the life they had created together. They had come through so much, and now, surrounded by the beauty they had cultivated together, they felt a peace that was deeper than words. The following week, Maya received an invitation to her friend Lucy's birthday party. It would be her first party since joining her new school, and she was bubbling with excitement. She spent hours picking out a gift and even rehearsed what she would say to Lucy's parents, practicing her polite hellos and thank yous. The day of the party arrived, and Emma watched as Maya ran off with her friends, her laughter blending with the cheerful voices of other children. She had worried for so long about Maya's happiness, but seeing her now, Emma knew that her daughter was finally free to be a child, free to dream, and free to live a life without fear. At the end of the party, as they were preparing to leave, Lucy's mother approached Emma with a warm smile. "Maya is such a sweetheart," she said. "Lucy just adores her. She's been such a good friend." Emma felt a rush of gratitude, knowing how much Maya had longed for this sense of belonging. She thanked Lucy's mother, and as they walked back to the car, Maya chatted excitedly about all the games they had played and the cake they had eaten. "Lucy said I could come over to her house sometime," Maya said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Is that okay, Mama?" Emma squeezed her hand. "Of course, sweetheart. You can have as many playdates as you want." Maya grinned, hugging her teddy bear close. She was surrounded by love and friendship now, and the darkness that had once threatened her had been replaced by light. As the seasons changed, the family created more beautiful memories together. They spent weekends hiking, visiting the local farmers market, and even taking a trip to the beach, where Maya built sandcastles and collected seashells to add to her growing collection. Each moment felt precious, each memory a testament to the resilience of their love. One evening, as they were watching the sunset from their backyard, Maya climbed onto Emma's lap, leaning her head against her shoulder. She was quiet, her eyes fixed on the fading colors of the sky. "Mama," she whispered, "thank you for everything. For loving me, for keeping me safe. I know I wasn't always here, but I feel like I belong." Emma wrapped her arms around Maya, her heart full. "You've always belonged, Maya. From the moment we met you, you were ours, and you always will be." Maya looked up, her eyes shining with tears, but her smile was steady. "I'm so glad I found you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Emma and John held her close, their hearts swelling with love and gratitude. They had faced their fears, their hearts had healed, and they had built a family stronger than anything life could throw at them. As they sat together, watching the sun dip below the horizon, they knew that no matter what lay ahead, they would face it together. The journey they had taken was one of pain and resilience, but it had led them here, to a place of peace and belonging. And in that moment, they felt the beautiful fullness of their lives, a family bound by love, courage, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Their garden bloomed, their laughter filled the air, and they knew they had finally come home.